Well, in the end, despite all the hype, despite all the chat about this being a much more competitive season, the qualifying session for the 2024 Bahrain Grand Prix had a very familiar look about it. But let's not underrate the performance of Max in the new Red Bull RB20, because it was a case study on how to go about practice and then qualifying. Do your homework, don't get sidetracked. Even this morning in FP3, they went out, both Red Bulls, on hard tyres, everybody else on the soft tyre, focusing on trying to get the car perfectly balanced to get that quick lap for qualifying. There were Red Bull doing some more homework on the hard tyre, just did a couple of laps, a little bit of fuel in the car, but bedding everything in, just making sure everything felt right on the hard, and then going to the soft tyre. And again, doing nothing spectacular on the soft. I think perhaps the most interesting aspect of the day was how the cars, and particularly Red Bull, adapted to the changing conditions of qualifying by getting it absolutely right with front wing flap. Here are the top speeds from FP3 through the trap. You can see there Nico Hulkenberg quickest in the Haas-Ferrari. That was a portent of things to come, that's for sure, because what a great job that team have done all weekend. Kevin Magnussen right behind him, 318. Max Verstappen not particularly quick, 317. Yeah, there or thereabouts, that's what you would say. Sergio Perez also in the same sort of territory. Ferrari, midfield, and very slow right at the back in terms of top speed, the two Mercedes, which shows how much downforce they're now running to have got that sweet spot, to have got the car more drivable. The downside is that they've added more downforce to the car, and it's not necessarily efficient downforce because it's obviously causing a certain amount of drag. And it's exactly the same story at McLaren-Mercedes, although they had less of a reason to have to add downforce to that car. I guess, again, looking for better tyre management and more downforce. But like Mercedes, very slow in a straight line now. Now have a look at, see what happened through the speed trap in qualifying. Look what Red Bull did to Max's car as a result of all that homework. Right, we'll take out the front flap now, take out some wing probably, going into Parc Ferme, 327, quickest in top speed, and Max living with that loss of downforce with an absolutely superb lap. I talked yesterday about how he's using third in turn 10, most drivers using second, quite a lot using third now. Kind of depends on the ratios you're using, but certainly the top end of the drivers, if that's the right phrase, using the longer gears, but not many using third for the very tight right-hander before turn 9, which I guess we can call turn 8, that turn 8 right-hander. Most drivers taking second. Max and Lewis, got to say, going through there in third as well. Really nice to see that. Just shows how on top of the car they are. Qualifying came down to the last run in Q3. It was Max Verstappen v Charles Leclerc. And remember, I'd actually said that I thought Ferrari put a lot of effort into trying to get Charles on the pole here. Good way to start the year, obviously. But their best chance in the race early on in the season was to put a bit of race pressure on Max. If they can get in front of Max, they can maybe start to dictate the strategy for Red Bull. And that's what they worked very hard to achieve. Carlos Sainz, indeed, was quickest in Q1. Charles Leclerc was quickest in Q2, and he looked very good in Q3 until Max went in that last run 0.3 faster. An absolutely brilliant lap by Max Verstappen. Didn't look 0.3 faster, and that's how good it was. And when it is like that, you know it's the epitome of the art. But going back to Ferrari, look where they were in terms of top speed, and they didn't really change anything. 315 in FP3, 318 in qualifying, and perhaps that is the story of qualifying, whereas Red Bull obviously had a lot in hand they could take out of the car in terms of downforce. Ferrari very unwilling to take that downforce out of the car, wanting to keep the downforce in the car, probably in terms of the race tomorrow for time management, for keeping that sweet spot for the two drivers. And that's the difference really between the RB20 and the new SF24 Ferrari. The Red Bull already showing it's got much more versatility in terms of adaptation to conditions and indeed how much top speed they need in order to have a significant advantage going into the race. And that's what we see there. One of the strange things about qualifying was the performance of Lewis Hamilton, given how good he was on Thursday on light fuel and on the fuel runs, and the car looking very good. George Russell went a different direction overnight, they say, in terms of getting a performance lap out of the car, whereas Lewis went in the direction of really make this car work on a heavy load of fuel, they say. And that's the difference. It seems, I mean, we often hear when drivers don't go particularly well in qualifying, the cop-out answer is always, oh, well, you know, I've got the car set up for full fuel, or the car's really good on a fuel race distance. Let's hope that's the case tomorrow with Lewis. In terms of how they looked on the circuit, George on the absolute edge, as I say, totally reflexy, balancy car control lap. Not the sort of lap that he could reproduce twice over, I don't think, without making a major mistake. And he almost lost it through turn 6, that downhill quick corner. Whereas Lewis never really looked that quick in the car. He looked about as he did yesterday, just that the lap time wasn't there. So let's hope it works for Lewis tomorrow, and that it is a question of he's got a great setup for the race. And we have to be a little bit sceptical about that, if only because it's hard to imagine George Russell being slow tomorrow, or indeed eating his tyres at a much faster rate than Lewis. That'll be the ultimate test to see whether that happens. But he did appear to be driving pretty much as he drove in 2023 in terms of the lines he's taking. He's pretty wide into most of the corners, not the Lewis Hamilton we used to see, where he's really shortening the corners under braking, but still looking really good in the car, very relaxed. But he'll be very, very disappointed with that qualifying time today. Behind George, the second Ferrari and the second Red Bull, Carlos Sainz and Sergio Perez. No real surprise there. But then Fernando Alonso did a very good job throughout. He found 2 or 3 tenths in qualifying. Never did a quick lap in the final run in Q3, but looking very good. Lost a couple of positions right at the end there. But the Aston Martin proving to be able to split the Mercedes, even in this first round of the championship. Fernando will be very happy with that. Remember, his forte is as a race driver, as distinct from a flat-out George Russell type qualifier. So that's a really good performance for Aston Martin. Very encouraging for them, even if Lance Stroll didn't get through into Q3. Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri ended up doing virtually the same lap time, 7th and 8th for McLaren-Mercedes. You could say that's a little bit disappointing. They've lost perhaps a bit of ground to Aston Martin over the winter, but we'll see how it goes tomorrow in the race. Obviously, the top speed, like that of Mercedes, is a big worry. Oscar Piastri, a little bit off the pace compared with Lando, but when it came down to pressure, again, because he's this great manipulative driver and because Lando's a little bit more reflexy, they two were very close in the final analysis at the end of Q3. And Lewis was 9th, and 10th, Nico Hulkenberg in the Haas-Ferrari, and Kevin Magnussen 15th, made it through to Q2 in the other one. Really good job, I think, by the entire Haas-Ferrari team. Easy for me to say that in a rather condescending way, but what I'm trying to say is a very different looking team from last year. Very calm, very organised, very logical. Big credit to the new team principal there, Ayo Kamatsu. Really good job in the way he's approached things and got the best from the car and from the drivers, as I kind of predicted he would do after everything they've gone through at Haas. This is a very different looking team from 2023. So great result for Nico Hulkenberg. Didn't even need to go out and do anything in Q3. He had made it through into the top 10. Good job for him. Then in the midfield, we had Yuki Tsunoda actually out-qualifying Daniel Ricciardo. I said a few live streams back that I thought this one-on-one between Yuki and Daniel could be one of the most interesting aspects of 2024. So first blood to Yuki Tsunoda, even though for most of the weekend so far, it's been, I say weekend, it's actually been Thursday and half of Friday, it's been Daniel Ricciardo who's looked a little bit ahead of Yuki. But when it came down to it, putting that lap together on the soft tyres, it was Yuki Tsunoda who just failed to get through into Q3 in the Visa Cash App RB. We're going to have to keep saying that all year, I guess we are. Ahead of Lance Stroll, Alex Albon, about where he normally is in the Williams. No surprise there. Good job for them. Quick in a straight line, as they have been and as they continue to be. And Kevin Magnussen, as I say, the other driver that got through into Q2. Those who didn't make it, I suppose no real surprise. I'm kind of disappointed that the Saubers were not a little bit better, but Valtteri Bottas and Guan Yu Zhou, 16th and 17th, never really looked as if they're going to put pressure on drivers like Ricciardo or Yuki Tsunoda. Logan Sargent kind of lost, it seemed, lost the back end, couldn't feel the back end at the end of Q1, and the two Alpine Renaults, last and second last. Very unimpressive performance. So that team for sure has taken the biggest step backwards over the winter. The team that's taken the biggest step forwards, I think you'd have to flip a coin between Mercedes, that performance of George Russell, albeit an absolute banzai lap, and Aston Martin, who sort of recovered a little bit of their rather desultory middle phase of 2023 and looked very strong again with Fernando Alonso and to some extent with Lance Stroll. But the real talk, of course, is what happened at the front with Max Verstappen and the way that run, that way that qualifying, the way FP3 was organised. There was no sign of Max being under pressure. There was no fluster. And that's, of course, part of the way he drives the car anyway. It's not all about reflexes and bravery with Max. It's about manipulating the car, warning the car, letting it know what it's going to do. And as we say, if you can use third gear when it's iffy between third and second, use third. as he did. Absolutely superb through 9 and 10. His big forte was the first sector compared with the two Ferraris. No real surprise there because he's got that top speed on the straight, and then there's another straight after that chicane, a back straight, and then down the hill, of course, the Red Bull oozing grip and balance. So once you've got that, imagine what he's going to do on the first lap tomorrow. Assuming, of course, he gets the lead going into the first corner, which I think he's probably likely to do. He will really drive as hard as he can. He'll drive on the absolute limit, given the newness of the tyres not being up to temperature, given the fuel load that he's got. He will be worth watching just through that first sector on the opening lap tomorrow, no doubt about that. For the record, this is how they finished FP3 this morning. As you can imagine, there was quite a lot of excitement at Ferrari being quick. Fernando Alonso was fastest for a while. The crowd seemed to love that one. Max Verstappen, nobody really took much notice, 31-0. What's Max doing? Maybe the Red Bull's not going to be as good as the RB19. Maybe they are going to be really fighting to be on the front row. Yeah, right. He was just doing his homework. Red Bull were just doing their homework. He was just pacing himself beautifully into Q3, even though it was still FP3. Lando Norris looked very good this morning as well. George Russell 31-1 and Lewis 31-4. It's a little bit of a sign that Lewis wasn't particularly happy with the car, and he was out. He was out actually on track before anybody else. It was rather embarrassing, really, to be going around a little bit at the moment when the Minardis used to go out. There was Lewis Hamilton tracked to himself in the first 7 minutes of FP3, going round and round on his own. Lewis probably didn't know that at the time, but if he knew about it now, he probably wouldn't be too happy about that. And then you can see, in terms of top speed, how Red Bull then responded to everything that had happened in FP3 and took wing out of the car and found the top speed they needed to get the pole and to get Sergio Perez right up there as well. So great job all around. What a great racing car it is when you've got the thing balanced, you've got the grip level you want, you've done your homework on full tanks, and then you thought, right, it's qualifying now in the race. We'll take some wing off the car now because we need more top speed. And it doesn't affect the rest of the lap. That's basically what happened. And that is how good a car the RB20 is. Does that come under the heading of sandbagging, perhaps? Maybe it does, because in theory, the car shouldn't have been that good with so much wing taken out of it, and yet it was. So maybe they've just been running unbelievable fuel levels up until qualifying, and then we saw the first time we saw them on a parity with everybody else. Anyway, who knows? I guess Ferrari might be thinking that right now, because they must have been reasonably confident that they could have got the pole. Charles Leclerc back there looking really good. Lewis will be thinking, what will Lewis be thinking? He'll be thinking, oh, well, at least the Ferrari's on the front row. That's good. Making the right decision. Charles Leclerc's quite quick, isn't he? Anyway, we'll see what happens. And he'll be a bit mystified probably by how quick George was. But remember, Lewis was quickest yesterday, so that was something. So we can see what goes on when the lights go out tomorrow for the Bahrain Grand Prix, first round of the World Championship. Can't wait for that. Come and join me. Thanks to Pitbox, thanks to Jetcraft, and thanks to you, the viewers. Take care.